She was still wearing her uniform when they told her to leave. Fatima Osei stood in the middle of the cafeteria at Riverside Charter Academy in Columbus, Ohio, a tray of untouched food in her hands, and listened to Principal Gerald Holt tell her that her services were no longer needed. He said it quietly, the way people say things they know are wrong but have already decided to do anyway. He said it with his eyes on the wall behind her, not on her face. Fatima set the tray down on the nearest table. She didn't cry. She just nodded once, the way her mother had taught her. Chin up, eyes open, no tears where they can see them. She had been a cafeteria aide at Riverside for 3 years. Not a teacher, not an administrator. She served food. She wiped tables. She made sure the hot lines stayed at temperature, and the kids with dietary restrictions got the right trays. It was not a glamorous job. It did not pay well. But Fatima showed up every single day at 6:45 in the morning, and she knew every child's name, and she had never once, not in 3 years, called in sick. So when Gerald Holt told her she was being let go, she asked one question. Was it because of Marcus? He didn't answer. But the way his jaw tightened told her everything. Fatima had come to Columbus from Ghana when she was 19. She came with her Aunt Abina, who had a cousin who had a friend who knew someone with a spare bedroom in a house on the east side. That was how it worked. You followed a thread and hoped it held. Her mother had pressed a small Bible into her hands at the airport. God goes where you go, she said. Don't forget to look for him. Fatima found work quickly, because she was not afraid of work. She cleaned houses first. Then she worked a register at a gas station on Morse Road. Then she got her food handler's certification and applied at the school district. Riverside called her back in 2 days. She took it without hesitation. She was 26 when she started there. By 29, she had her own apartment, small, clean, a single window in the kitchen that caught the afternoon sun perfectly. She had a savings account with enough in it to make her feel like something was hers. She sent money home every month. She called her mother every Sunday. She was not a rich woman, but she was a careful one. At Riverside, the kids called her Miss Fatima. Even the teenagers who acted like they were too cool to acknowledge the cafeteria staff, even they eventually said her name, because she remembered theirs. And there is something disarming about being seen by someone you expected to ignore you. Marcus Webb was 11 years old. He was in the 6th grade. He ate lunch alone most days, at the end of second row, with a book propped against his tray. He was thin in the way that worried Fatima, not the thin of a fast metabolism, but the thin of not enough. She noticed things like that. She had grown up knowing the difference. She started giving him extra, nothing dramatic. A second roll, a larger scoop of mashed potatoes. A carton of chocolate milk slipped onto his tray with a small nod. She did not make a production of it. She did not want him to feel like charity. She just made sure he left the line with enough to get him through the afternoon. This went on for 6 weeks. Then, on a Tuesday in November, Marcus came through the lunch line and slid his card, and Fatima watched the system flash red. Negative balance. 0 funds. Account suspended. School policy at Riverside Charter Academy was clear. Written in black and white in the parent handbook, reviewed at the start of every year, posted on the school's website in the FAQ section under meal accounts. If a student's account reached a negative balance beyond $5, they were not to receive a hot lunch. They could receive a cold cheese sandwich and a carton of milk instead. That was the policy. Gerald Holt had reminded his staff of it twice that semester already. Fatima looked at the screen. Then she looked at Marcus. He was looking at the tray she had already loaded with the hot meal, chicken and rice and green beans, the kind of lunch that actually fed a growing child, and his face had gone very still, in the way that children's faces go still when they are trying not to show that something hurts. Fatima pushed the tray forward. "Go on and sit down," she said. He blinked. "But my card. I see it. Go sit down, baby." He took the tray. He didn't say thank you, not right then. He just walked to his usual spot at the end of the second row, set the tray down, opened his book, and ate. Fatima marked it in the system as a manual override. She intended to cover the balance herself at the end of the day. It was $4.30. She could do that. She did not know that a parent volunteer named Brenda Schultz had been standing behind the service counter, refilling the napkin dispensers, and had seen the whole thing. She did not know that Brenda Schultz had walked directly to Gerald Holt's office after the lunch period and filed a verbal complaint about a cafeteria employee who had, quote, deliberately bypassed the school's payment policy and given a free hot meal to an ineligible student. She did not know any of this until the following morning, when Gerald Holt called her into his office at 7:15 and told her, with his eyes on the wall behind her, that her services were no longer needed. The union didn't help much. She had representation, technically, but the school had documented it as a policy violation. She had overridden a system flag without authorization, and the language in her contract was specific enough that they told her, gently, that there wasn't much ground to stand on. She appealed. The district reviewed it and upheld the termination. She spent 3 weeks applying to other positions in the district. Nothing came back. Her Aunt Abina called every few days. "Come stay with me," she said. "You don't have to do this alone." "I'm fine," Fatima said. She was not fine. Her savings account, the one she had built so carefully over 3 years, was now the thing between her and her rent. She stretched it. She cut back on everything. The little indulgences, the good coffee she bought on Fridays, the occasional dinner out. She called her mother on Sunday and did not tell her what had happened because her mother would worry, and there was nothing her mother could do from 7,000 miles away except worry harder. She looked for other work. She applied at the county school board, at 2 other charter networks, at a hospital cafeteria on the west side. She got 1 call back. It went nowhere. At night, she sat by her kitchen window and watched the afternoon light change into evening and thought about all the choices that had led her to this exact moment. She did not regret giving Marcus that tray. She had turned it over in her mind 100 times, and every single time she arrived at the same place. She would do it again. She knew she would. That was both a comfort and a torment, because it meant there was no version of herself she could go back to that would have made a different choice, which meant there was no path that didn't end here. In this apartment, with a savings account that got smaller every week. She did not tell anyone what the worst part was. The worst part was that she had checked on Marcus, asked a teacher she trusted quietly, just to know he was okay. And the teacher had said that Marcus was fine, that his lunch balance had been refunded by the front office after the incident, and that he was eating the hot lunch again. So her job had been taken, and the child she lost it for was fine. And the system had fixed itself after it destroyed her because the destruction was the point. The message had been sent. Don't override us again. She sat with that for a long time. It was her Aunt Abina who told her about the community center. "They're looking for someone to run the meal program on Saturday mornings," Abina said. "It's volunteer at first, but the director, she is a serious woman. She is building something real." Fatima almost said no. She was tired. She was stretched. She did not have a lot of volunteer left in her. But she went. Once. On a Saturday in December, when the cold had come down hard on Columbus, and the streets near the center were quiet with it. The East Side Community Resource Center was a converted storefront on Kelton Avenue. Inside, it was warm and smelled like rice, and something spiced that Fatima couldn't immediately identify. There were tables set up in rows, and there were people, families, elderly men and women, a few young mothers with babies on their hips, already seated, already waiting. The woman running it was named Constance Adeyemi. She was perhaps 60, with close-cropped gray hair and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, and the kind of unhurried authority that Fatima recognized immediately as real. Not the authority of a title. The authority of someone who had been doing something important for a long time and had stopped needing anyone's approval for it. Constance shook Fatima's hand and looked at her the way people rarely look at you, directly, without agenda, just taking in what was there. "Your aunt says you know food service," Constance said. "Yes, ma'am. She says you lost your job." Fatima nodded. "Do you want to tell me about it?" And Fatima, who had told almost no one, found herself telling Constance about Marcus, about the red flash of the system, about the tray, about Gerald Holt's eyes on the wall behind her. Constance listened without interrupting. When Fatima finished, Constance was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How many children do you think go hungry in this city on a school day?" Fatima said she didn't know the exact number. "About 1 in 5, Constance said. "In some zip codes, closer to 1 in 3. She folded her hands on the table. "You did what any decent person should have done. The problem is that decency costs something in this world, and not everyone who deserves to pay that cost is the one who ends up paying it." Fatima looked at her. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" Constance smiled, a real smile, the kind with teeth. "No, it's supposed to make you feel seen now. Do you want to help me feed some people or not?" Fatima stayed that Saturday. She came back the next. She came back the one after that. By February, she was running the Saturday program. By March, Constance had given her a small stipend, not enough to live on, but enough to matter. Fatima kept looking for full-time work, but she stopped feeling like she was drowning. The center served about 80 families on a busy Saturday. Fatima learned their rhythms, their dietary needs, the particular way that Mrs. Patterson from the 3rd floor of the Bryden Road apartments liked her tea, and the fact that the 2 little girls, who always came with their grandmother, preferred the chicken stew to everything else, and would sometimes take a second helping if you offered it, before they could talk themselves out of asking. She knew them by name. Of course she did. One Saturday in April, a man came in that Fatima hadn't seen before. He was perhaps 50, well-dressed in a quiet way. Nothing flashy, but the coat was good wool, and the shoes were maintained. He sat at a table near the back and took a meal tray and ate slowly, watching the room. Fatima noticed him the way she noticed everything, because noticing was what she did. But she didn't approach him. They got occasional visitors, journalists, church groups checking out partnership possibilities, sometimes a city council staffer doing a listening tour. She let Constance handle that end of things, but the man came back the following Saturday, and the one after that. He always took a tray. He always ate quietly. He always left without speaking to anyone. On his 4th Saturday, Fatima set a cup of tea on the table beside his tray without being asked. He looked up. "You look like a tea person," she said simply, and moved on. The next week, he was there again. When Fatima passed his table, he said, "My name is Solomon." She told him her name. "How long have you been running this program?" he asked. "A few months. The woman who runs the center, is she the one who built this?" "Yes. Constance built all of this. I just help." Solomon nodded slowly, like he was filing that away. "Do you enjoy it?" he asked. "The work." Fatima looked around the room, at Mrs. Patterson, at the 2 little girls with their grandmother, at the young father in the corner, who came every week with a toddler on his knee and always looked a little less defeated by the time he left. "Yes," she said. "I do." She went back to work. She didn't think much more about it. 3 weeks later, Constance called Fatima into her small office at the back of the center. The office was crowded with files and a whiteboard covered in grant deadline dates, and a framed photograph of Constance shaking hands with someone at a podium. Constance said, "Do you remember the man who's been coming on Saturdays?" "Solomon." Fatima said she did. "He came to see me yesterday," Constance said. "He sat in this chair where you're sitting and he told me his name is Solomon Achebe. He's the founder of Achebe Education Foundation." Fatima went very still. She knew the name. Anyone in Columbus who worked in education or social services knew the name. The Achebe Education Foundation had built 3 community schools in underserved neighborhoods in the last decade. They funded meal programs in 4 counties. They had just, in the last year, launched an initiative to address chronic hunger in charter school systems across Ohio. Specifically targeting the gap funding problem, the policy that allowed schools to withhold hot meals from children with negative balances. They had a name for the initiative. They called it the Full Tray Project. "He told me," Constance said, "that he has been looking for someone to direct the Columbus implementation of the Full Tray Project for several months. He said he has interviewed candidates. He said none of them had the right combination of ground-level experience and, his words, moral clarity." Fatima was quiet. "He said he came to the center because he heard about our meal program, and then he sat in the back for 4 Saturdays because he wanted to see how the program actually ran. Not the pitch, the reality." Constance paused. "He said the person running the food line knew every family's name." Fatima looked at her hands. "The position is full-time," Constance said. "It includes benefits, the salary is," and here she slid a piece of paper across the desk. Fatima looked at the number. She looked at it for a long moment. "This is real?" she said. "He is coming back tomorrow morning," Constance said, "if you want to meet with him." Fatima sat in the office after Constance left. She thought about Gerald Holt and his eyes on the wall. She thought about the cold system screen and the red flash, and Marcus Webb carrying his tray to the end of the second row. She thought about the 3 weeks after the termination when she couldn't sleep past 4 in the morning because her mind kept turning the same corners. She thought about sitting by her kitchen window watching the light go and wondering if she had made everything worse by being exactly who she was. And she thought about something her mother had said years ago, before Fatima ever got on a plane, before any of this. Her mother, pressing that small Bible into her hands, saying, "A good heart is not a weakness. Don't let them tell you it is. It just takes longer to find the people who know the difference." She sat there for a long time. Then she dried her eyes, stood up, straightened her shirt, and walked back out to the serving line because there were still families waiting, and the rice was going to need restocking before the afternoon rush. She met with Solomon the next morning. The meeting lasted 2 hours. He asked her about food systems, about what she'd seen in 3 years of school cafeteria work, about the specific policy structures that allowed hunger to persist in institutions built to serve children. She answered him directly, without performance, because she had lived inside those questions for months and had nothing left to dress them up with. Near the end of the meeting, he asked her about the incident at Riverside. He said he had heard about it. He didn't say from whom, and he asked her to tell him what happened in her own words. So she told him, the same way she had told Constance, the red screen, Marcus's still face, the tray, Gerald Holt. She told it plainly, without bitterness, which was harder than it sounds. When she finished, Solomon said, "Were you angry?" She thought about it. "Yes," she said, "for a while. And now?" She looked at him. "Now I want to make sure the next person who works a school cafeteria line doesn't have to make that choice. Because they shouldn't have to. The policy should be different. The system should be different. That's more useful than being angry. Solomon was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The position is yours if you want it." Fatima looked out the window of the conference room. They were at the Foundation's offices downtown, 10th floor, glass overlooking the river, and she thought about how far this room was from the gas station on Morse Road, from her Aunt Abina's borrowed bedroom, from a kitchen window and a savings account running low. Not so far, really. It was the same city. She was the same woman. "Yes," she said, "I want it." She started on the 1st of May. The first school district meeting was uncomfortable. There were administrators in that room who knew Riverside, who knew the case, who had been part of the policy review that led nowhere. Fatima walked in with her folders and her data and her name card, and she sat down, and she did not perform forgiveness, and she did not perform bitterness. She was simply there to do the work, and she did it. By the end of the year, 3 Columbus charter schools had adopted a revised meal policy, one that allowed cafeteria staff to exercise professional judgment in cases of account deficit, with a transparent reimbursement process on the back end. It wasn't everything. It was a start. Gerald Holt retired in June. Fatima did not mark the occasion one way or another. She had things to do. She still calls her mother every Sunday. She tells her things now that she didn't tell her before. The hard parts, the months after Riverside, the nights by the kitchen window. Her mother listens, and sometimes she is quiet for a long time after. "I told you," her mother said, the first time Fatima told her the whole story. "A good heart is not a weakness." "I know, Mama," Fatima said. "It just takes longer, I know." She could hear her mother smiling through the phone, 7,000 miles away, and she could still hear it. "Now, before you close this out, think about this. If you were Fatima, standing at that serving line with a hungry child and a red screen flashing in your face, would you have pushed that tray forward? Drop an A or a B in the comments. A if yes, B if you think there was a smarter way. And tell me why. Because I think this one is harder than it looks. If this story moved you, this channel has more where it came from. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.